Hi, you have Megan and Sophie here with another episode of the Tushti Book Review, and this time we're looking at Rubyfruit Jungle by Rita Brown. So for some reason it took us this long to review our first female author, so we're excited about that, and this is also the second LGBT book we have reviewed.
So Rubyfruit Jungle was Rita Brown's first novel. It was published in 1973, and it has some autobiographical components. Now a brief outline of what we'll be talking about in this episode. First, we're going to be doing a little bit of summary of Molly Bolt's life. Second, we're going to be talking about the themes that just pop up throughout the novel. And lastly, we're going to rate the book using our Tushti rating scale.
So first, a summary of the book. Our main character in this book is Molly Bolt, and she is actually an orphan. She is adopted by her mom's friend Carrie and her husband, and they all live in Pennsylvania. Now, from an early life, Molly's kind of a tomboy. She hangs out with the boys. She has a girlfriend when she's in 6th grade who she loses her virginity to. Her name's Rita. But before the relationship can go anywhere, Molly's family moves to Florida, where she stays for high school and eventually attends the University of Florida.
At the University of Florida, she gets expelled because of a relationship of a sexual nature with her roommate, Faye. After that, she travels to New York, where she struggles to find jobs and just make a living because it's extremely expensive to live there. But eventually she finds a job and she attends NYU film school. The book ends with Molly Bolt revisiting her past by first visiting Rita in Pennsylvania and then visiting Carrie in Florida and filming a documentary that she then uses for her final project to graduate from film school.
Next, we're going to look at the main themes.
The first main theme is feminism. And in this book, the topic of feminism is always present in the book, but not in an in-your-face manner, but rather in like very subtle ways. For example, Molly is a very ambitious girl and then ambitious woman because she wants to be president, she wants to be a director and film her own movies. She wants to be someone in life. And at that time, which was the 50s, 60s, and 70s, women were not expected to want anything other than marrying well and being a good housewife/mother. That was all that society wanted from women. Molly is very aware throughout of what society expects of women and how society treats women, but she still defies the system.
So even as a gay woman, she's kind of defying this heteronormative butch femme roles that some of lesbians at the time fell into. And there's actually a part in the story where her friend brings her to a butch femme bar, and here's what she says in response to this. "That's the craziest dumbass thing I ever heard tell of. What's the point of being a lesbian if a woman is going to look and act like an imitation man? Hell, if I want a man, I'll get the real thing and not one of these chippies." So while Molly's a little bit insensitive here because it's obviously okay to be butch or femme if that's who you are, Molly, we think, didn't really fit into one of these roles. It's just kind of too much of a mirror of heterosexuality, and she's kind of androgynous. She doesn't define more as masculine or more as feminine. And we think that throughout the book, she's looking for relationships that are more freeing and less constraining. So to sum up this first theme, Molly is really not like an intellectual feminist throughout this book, but she's very conscious of the injustices that women, and particularly lesbians, face.
The second theme is authenticity. Throughout the book and from an early age, Molly is authentic, true to herself, sometimes almost to a fault. And we're going to talk about 3 passages in the book that illustrate how Molly is authentic. The first one occurs when Molly and her adoptive cousin Leroy are 12 years old. Leroy asks her if she wants to marry him in the near future when they're both 16. She asks him, why does he want to marry her? And Leroy responds by saying that that's what people do. That's what is expected of people, and if you don't get married, people do not like you. And to that, Molly just says, I don't care whether people like me or not. I care if I like me.
So another example is when Molly's in high school and she's having a conversation with one of her best friends, and her best friend just found out that Molly's a lesbian. And so she asks her if Molly thinks she's queer. And here's what Molly says. "Oh great, you too. So now I wear this label queer emblazoned across my chest. Or I could always carve a scarlet L on my forehead. Why does everyone have to put you in a box and nail the lid on it? I don't know what I am, polymorphous and perverse. Shit, I don't even know if I'm white. I'm me. That's all I am and all I want to be."
The last passage occurs when Molly is already in university and she's being questioned by a university authority whether she's having sexual relations with her roommate, who is also a girl. Instead of lying and choosing the easy way out, she tells the truth. And by doing that, she loses her scholarship, gets expelled from the university, and also gets interned into the psych ward for some days.
So basically, Molly here would rather tell the truth, be honest, than lie, because lying would be admitting some fault that she feels like she didn't deserve. So Molly's also not ashamed of who she is or how she acts, so there's no point to her in hiding or lying about it. So the third main theme of the book is poverty. And poverty is such a fundamental part of this novel because it really shapes Molly as a character, and you get to see how she encounters poverty through every step of the story. So we really noticed how this theme of poverty corresponded with the theme of her being authentic. So basically, because she came from nothing, she doesn't owe anything to anybody. People or money or society never had any leverage over her, so she was free to be authentic and free to be herself. Poverty also served as a point of contrast in this book with how Molly lives her life and how other characters that she interacts with live their lives. This is especially obvious in New York, where she kind of rubs elbows with high elite of society and people in academia, wealthy people, and then she goes home to her shoebox of an apartment where the wallpaper is falling off and she sleeps on a bed held up by milk crates. This contrast is noticed further when she leaves New York to go back home to see her adoptive mother, Carrie, and she sees that Carrie is still living very much in poverty, and she's kind of reminded of her roots and where she came from, essentially.
Now we're going to rate the book by using the Tushti rating system.
So the first component that we rated on was writing style, and we gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. And that's because it was well written, it was very blunt, comical, witty, just very fun to read, and it had a lot of good slang, kind of like idioms from that time in which it was written. I think what made it so strong was that it had like absolutely no fluff. It didn't have anything in there that wasn't necessary, and it didn't use like fancy language in order to sound more complex or more deep. It was just really simple, and that made it even stronger.
The next component is entertainment value, and we gave this book a 5 out of 5. And the reason is that we both devoured this book. It's filled to the brim with really fun stories, and it really feels like just reading a very smart and interesting person's diary. It's so fun.
The next component is plot, and we gave it 4 out of 5. So the main plot of the story that we saw was basically like this coming of age story of Molly. What we found interesting or kind of unconventional is that it's not really like a success story. It's kind of just more of Molly's life from a child to young adulthood, basically. And she still has a lot to live when the book ends.
The last component of a rating scale is structure, and we gave this book a 5 out of 5. The book follows this linear and chronological timeline. So basically it starts with Molly being 10 years old, ends with her being 24 years old. And it doesn't jump around in the past and the future and the present. It's chronological. And the thing about this, it's like even though the structure is so simple, it just helps the story. It does not hurt it at all. And it just makes it be so intimate. The result that this has on the reader is that it feels like a very intimate experience, that as if you're reading Molly's diary and you're just being told what happened. So it just helps the story instead of damaging it, and we actually think that it would have damaged it if Rita Mae Brown had chosen to use a more complex or fancier structure.
So overall, we gave this book a 5 out of 5 because we just freaking loved it, and we think you should go read it. Unless you don't like swearing or lesbians.